This is Florida Gulf Coast University.
We're fortunate enough tonight to have us a distinguished panel of lecturers that will initiate a dialogue on feminist forms of civic engagement, specifically relating to the film and contemporary issues.
Injustices that women face today, I would say that among the top ones that I continually feel that we need to draw attention to are the pay gap between men and women. Women are still paid far less than men, and women of color paid far less than even white women. There's still an astonishing level of violence against women in our society that is tolerated.
So I think, based on last time I checked, women make up 51% of the U.S. population, yet they only hold 17% of seats in the U.S. Congress. And I think, if I remember correctly, 2010 was the first time that women did not gain any seats in Congress since 1979.
We've sort of backslided, and in part because we're distracted. The media does a really good job of distracting us from what are the key issues in our society, mainstream media. There's also, to add to the statistics, something like 3.2% of women make up the Fortune 500. I think some of the reasons are, again, our socialization, our learning. Boys are very much encouraged to go into fields like science and technology and engineering, and even though we're doing a better job as a society of encouraging girls to go into those fields and be leaders, there's a lot of negative stereotyping of girls, a lot of even positive stereotyping, like, oh, you're a girl and you're good at math, good for you. That actually works. The research shows that works against girls because they're all of a sudden reminded, oh, I must be weird.
We finally will have made the progress we need to make when we don't question the gender of somebody running for an office, when we don't question the gender of somebody who's a candidate for a job, that we truly look for the best qualified person, all of those other elements aside.
I think a lot of people have this tendency to think that, way back when suffrage was a thing, all men were against it and all women were for it. And it's way, way more complicated than that, and absolutely men have played a critical role and continue to play a critical role in feminism.
The most current research suggests that men are the ones that are experiencing the most work-life or work-family conflict because of the increasing pressures, which is good. I think we'd all probably agree for men to participate in family work. But they're still under a lot of pressure to be the family breadwinner, and that's creating a mess for a lot of men. And so there's a lot of attention in research to, as Dr. Hayford pointed out, improving our family policies for everybody, not just for women. There is no democracy without participation, right? And that was one of the messages that kept coming up in their banners and in their slogans. Participation in the national elections is pretty sobering and shameful in terms of how few people vote. Something like 59% of eligible women voters in the 5-county area that we live in are registered to vote.
We all talk about our rights in this country. And we all want, we always say, I have my rights. So the problem is that rights come with responsibilities. And that we need to understand what that means. And so if you want your rights, then you better honor the responsibilities that go along with that. And the most simple, fundamental one is voting.
That's where we can start, is participating in politics and supporting candidates that support our values.
You cannot look at your own history and not feel some sort of obligation, not understand that this is a right and a privilege that you have to vote, and you are absolutely part of your own democracy.
I think it's important to recognize that in any case when there's a fight for something, there are people with an alternative point of view. Obviously, we support the idea of women's rights, but there are women who would argue another perspective, and I think it's very important to listen to that point of view, whether you agree with it or not.
You shouldn't be comfortable when you're receiving your education and educating yourself. It shouldn't be a comfortable process. You should be challenging yourself. You should feel challenged.
Go online, read through the amendments. Look at who is supporting them. Look at who is opposing them.
If you believe in equality for individuals, investigate what that actually means, and then support the candidates that are proposing platforms that advance that.
You can get involved on a real basic level and have an impact on your own society.
Run for office.
Yes.
Run for office. And that doesn't mean you have to run at the national level. There are lots of local offices that are open pretty regularly, and don't be afraid.
Hopefully this starts a larger conversation on campus about feminist civic engagement and larger women's issues. So thank you for coming tonight. Really appreciate it.